So the CN rock dump got recently overturned. It doesn't look like it's rained yet, so most of this material is not washed, but I thought I'd poke around, and I already spotted a piece with some zircons in it. Nothing super big, but I can recognize the color of the zircons. It's this piece here. The zircons are kind of this reddish brown color. You can see them in there. Let's check the other side. Maybe there's a large zircon on the other side. Doesn't look like it. It's a tiny one there. But first time I came here, I found like a 1 centimeter size zircon, which is pretty decent for this location. And I've heard of larger being found. It's rare, but it's there. So I'm just gonna poke around and see if I can find any half decent zircons. But this is what I found so far. For folks who've never been to the CN rock pile or rock dump, what can you find here? Well, one thing you can find here is blue sodalite. Plus, there are some other stuff. I've already showed you the zircons. There's also a white mineral here that fluoresces orange under UV light called hackmanite. And there's other stuff like cancrinite and some other minerals that I forget, but I've collected here before. So that kind of gives you an idea of what you're looking for here. Picked up a couple fragments. And then I spotted down there some nice piece of blue sticking out. I mean, it's dirty, but I can tell it's a solid piece of blue for this location. Yeah, that's a solid piece of sodalite. It's probably actually the best I found, at least for this location, so that's quite cool. I'll have to wet that down and show you guys that when it's wet. The colors will pop a lot better and it'll be a lot less dirty looking. But that's what you should expect from this location. It is a public location in the middle of Bancroft, so it is well visited. So it doesn't mean you're gonna have an easy time finding some of the things you might be after. For example, the zircons. But it's still worth a try in my opinion. There's always something interesting, and they seem to, at least the last couple of years, they seem to be turning over the piles every year right before the big gem and mineral show that shows up in Bancroft, the Gemboree Mineral Show. So I have a couple of these bigger chunks with broken zircon crystals in them. So with those, you just try and bust them open and see if you can pull anything good. And in this case, I got this one with this tiny little zircon. There's a broken large zircon on the side that you can see. And then I also noticed this guy. He's partially exposed to the elements, but the bashing freed him up fully, and I just kind of pried him off. But that's a whole little zircon crystal. So tiny. When you're getting hotter, here are a couple decent small ones in matrix with a little bit of mica. But you know, still chasing that big one. Here are a couple more zircons that have just rolled out of the matrix as I'm busting open the material. Not bad for intact little zircon crystals. Though this material's not super washed off. Notice this. And I poured some water on it. Of course, we got some really nice dark blue sodalite. That looks really good. I keep finding more rocks with zircons in it, and I just keep busting them up. And once in a while, you get some nice ones. Here's another one. This one has some good luster to the surface. Pretty happy with that. I just rolled out this lovely little zircon cluster. Came out of that boulder. It's got a couple half decent sized ones, so I'm just gonna work my way at it and split it open and just take it apart and hopefully get some nice larger zircons. I apologize for the bagpipe music in the background, but I finished smashing up. But yeah, we're done for the day. We're packing up. Found a couple good Sodalites. This piece looks amazing under when it's wet. And then obviously all the zircons. Here are a handful more of those zircons, those lovely little zircons. These are ones that just popped out of the matrix when I was extracting them. But they're lovely, kind of brown burgundy colored zircons. This time around at the CN rock pile, I did quite well. If you folks are interested in the UV mineral side, I will leave a link below so that you guys can check that out, because I was mainly focusing on looking for zircons and collecting zircons, which I did very well with. I found some nice, decent-sized small zircons, like for their at least for the CN pile. I think I did pretty well for this amount of zircons found and the sizes of zircons. The biggest zircon I've ever found at the CN rock pile was about 1 centimeter. I can also link in the description below the video of that collecting trip, but that was more than a couple years ago already. But let's get to looking at some of these specimens. First, we're going to look at some of the Sodalite. The piles had been recently overturned. When I had gone there, actually it was the weekend of the Jamboree, the Bancroft Jamboree, which is the August long weekend, which is like the first weekend of August. They had just freshly overturned the piles, and there hadn't been like a good rain yet, so stuff was still pretty dirty. But even then, I spotted a couple pretty nice solid blue fragments of Sodalite, and this was one of those. It's you can see it's super dark blue in some of the spots, which is quite nice. Then there was this big chunk. You can see there's a huge section of blue Sodalite there, and then there's some spots on the back, including this piece, which if you look, you can actually see, I believe that is the rough crystal shape of a Sodalite crystal. That, or the Sodalite filled in a section of mineralization where there were crystals alongside it, so it's basically pressed up against other mineral crystal faces. But I believe that might be actually a kind of lumpy partial shape of a Sodalite crystal, which is kind of cool. Now let's get to the zircons. Before we actually take a close look at all of them, I'll just give you a little background information about zircons, because they're pretty darn cool. So zircons are part of the neosilicate mineral group. They contain zirconium, hence the name zircon, and they're quite interesting because they're on the harder side, a 7.5 on the Mohs hardness scale, and they're quite durable. So they're resistant to weathering, and they're even resistant to metamorphosis. So when a rock metamorphosizes and there's zircons present, they can actually sometimes survive that metamorphosis, which is pretty cool. And one more additional important fact about zircons is that they usually contain a trace amount of uranium or thorium, which can be used in radioisotope dating, which makes zircons quite important because of their durability and resistance to weathering and metamorphosis. Often, scientists can use the zircons in rocks to date the rocks pretty accurately, because the zircons are pretty resistant to weathering. So they are around for a while, and because of the radioactive isotopes that they tend to carry in trace amounts, they can use those isotopes to actually do dating, which is quite fascinating. Now, with the zircons that I collected, my main goal was to get pieces in matrix. Now, sometimes that's hard. Sometimes when you're cracking open the rock and splitting it, they just tend to pop out. That's why I have a nice handful of decent-sized loose zircon crystals. They just tend to pop out of the matrix that they're in when you're trying to break apart the matrix to extract some nice matrix specimens. But these crystals are still quite nice. And they're a pretty decent size for the CN rock pile. I was pretty happy with some of the fresh material. There were a couple larger rocks that got turned over that were pretty rich in zircons, and so I just kind of went to town on them, splitting them open and trying to extract some decent sized ones, and I came away with some really good ones. This zircon has kind of the classic zircon shape that you'd expect them to kind of have, and there's a bunch of littler zircons kind of studded in the matrix on this one as well. It's quite a lovely little specimen. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the matrix pieces that I managed to collect. Got some decent ones, some good color and sharp crystal shape. Sometimes the specimens are a little on the smaller side, but that's okay. I still think they're worth taking home because I could trade them to people who are interested in these specimens, and that way I could trade them something that isn't too crazy it's easy to obtain. It's not going to cost a lot of money, or it's not going to cost them a valuable specimen to trade. Some of these matrix pieces are just studded in zircons. Like this piece is just chock full of them. A couple of decent sized ones in here, and then you got a bunch of smaller ones. This section's pretty interesting. You can see there's a mica book in there, and some of the zircons have grown in there, which is kind of unique. Now, most of the zircons they collected are this kind of dull reddish brown color, but every once in a while you get this more lighter reddish colored zircon. It was only one partial chunk that seemed to have some of these more reddish brown ones, and they were all quite small. This was one of the largest of those colored zircons. Overall, I have to say I'm quite pleased with this trip that I took to the CN rock pile. I found a bunch of zircons, and I even found a couple of really nice Sodalite specimens. I did some UV hunting, but I just didn't record it because that's not what I was focusing on, but I found a couple of nice UV specimens as well. So overall, it was a good trip to the CN rock pile. It's definitely still a location that I would recommend folks going, even though it's a public location and lots of people collect there. This year, at least, they overturned it, so the piles are a lot more fresh, and obviously there's still more stuff to look for. Hopefully in this video, the information that I gave you is helpful enough that you can look for your own zircon-bearing rock at the CN rock pile. And hopefully you can also find some nice zircons there as well. But this brings us to the end of the video. Please, in the comments below, let me know what you enjoyed the most in this video. And also, please do like and subscribe. That really helps out the channel, and I really appreciate the support. And folks, just have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys in the next video.